Some legends are just stories you tell around a campfire, but others come with police reports. Today, we're digging into the American legend of the Goatman, but we're doing it through the eyes of a lawman whose totally normal patrol went completely off the rails. So, just try to put yourself in his shoes for a second. You're a cop driving down a deserted road late at night. Out of nowhere, something darts out. The impact is so violent, it nearly flips your Dodge Durango. That's not a fender bender. That's a catastrophic collision. And that's exactly what Patrolman Gil Sanchez said happened to him. And right there, that's the absolute heart of the mystery, isn't it? Because after a hit that massive, you'd expect to find, well, anything. But what Sanchez found, or rather what he didn't find, is what makes this so strange. What in the world can take a direct hit from an SUV and just walk away? To even begin to understand what could have been on that road in Colorado, we actually have to rewind the clock a bit. Because it turns out this was far from the first time someone reported seeing something like this. The story of the Goatman is this weird thread that's been woven through American folklore for decades. The whole legend really explodes in the late 1960s. First, it's in Dallas, Texas. You've got these reports of a huge 7-foot-tall thing scaring the life out of people by jumping on their cars. Then, just a couple of years later, the stories pop up again, this time in Maryland, and they get a whole lot darker. And you can really see how the legend evolves right here. In Dallas, yeah, it was scary. Police even investigated a huge gash on a car, but mostly people wrote it off as a prank. But in Maryland, whoa, the stories turned violent. A family's puppy was found decapitated. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was something terrifying, so much so that it was making headlines in the Washington Post. So after that initial wave of sightings back in the 60s and 70s, the Goatman just kind of faded away. The stories went quiet. But the legend wasn't gone. It was just dormant, waiting to step out of the shadows and, well, right into the path of a police cruiser. Okay, so now let's get back to that night. This is the full story from Patrolman Gil Sanchez himself, describing a routine shift that turned into, well, anything but. So picture it. Sanchez is on this county road about 10 at night, not another car in sight. He's going maybe 45, 50 miles per hour when he catches movement out of the corner of his eye. It's a figure. And it's not running away from the road, it's running directly at his vehicle. He sees it for just a split second in the headlights, and then bam, impact. He slams on the brakes, skids to a stop, and his first thought is just the damage. He gets out, fully expecting to see the front end of his cruiser just completely destroyed. But there's nothing, not a dent, not a scratch, and even weirder, no body, no blood. The only proof that anything even happened are his own skid marks on the road. Now, that initial shock and confusion, that started to turn into something else entirely. Standing there all alone on that dark road, Sanchez starts to feel this deep, primal fear. He realizes he's not alone out there. And this is where it really shifts from a weird car accident to a full-on horror story. He can't see anything, but he can hear it. Footsteps. Something big, moving around in the brush just off the road. He said the feeling was just an overwhelming sensation of just dread. He knew, without a doubt, that something was watching him. As a trained officer, his mind is racing, assessing the situation, and he comes to this terrifying realization. He just hit this thing with a 2-ton SUV at high speed, and it's still moving around. He knew, instinctively, that his standard issue 9mm pistol would be completely and utterly useless. He scrambles back into his cruiser, and that's when he finally sees it clearly. His description? It's chilling, and it sounds an awful lot like those old legends. The upper body of a man, he said, but the lower half of a goat. An impossible creature, standing right there in front of him. So the actual encounter was over in just a few minutes, but the psychological fallout was just getting started. I mean, how does a police officer even start to process that? How do you report seeing a monster while you're on duty? For 2 long hours, the entire rest of his shift, Sanchez was just too shaken to go back out on patrol. He drove back to the station and just sat there, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. So after wrestling with it for a few days, it's finally time to make his official report to the sheriff. He walks into that office totally expecting his career to be over. He's bracing himself to be laughed out of the room or, even worse, put on psychological leave for basically losing his mind.
But the sheriff's response was the last thing he expected. He listened to the entire unbelievable story, and when Sanchez was done, he just sat back and said two simple, absolutely chilling words. "I believe you." And you just have to wonder, what did that sheriff already know to accept a story like that without even blinking?
In the end, Patrolman Sanchez's story just leaves us with this really unnerving question. We think of myths as things that live in old books or in our imagination. But what happens when that myth steps out of the dark woods and right into the glare of your headlights? It makes you wonder what else might be out there, just waiting.